Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, and I want to welcome you to the show where we share some wit and wisdom and some wonderful experts to help women navigate career and life changes and challenges. And most importantly, so you know you're not alone. Each week through our conversations, we share resources to encourage women to be more confident, resilient, and brave in their choices. We stream live weekly every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the E360 TV network, where you can find us on your favorite streaming services like Roku and Apple TV and Amazon Fire. And we go live simultaneously on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where you can interact with us. And if you're on the run and love to listen to your favorite shows, we are also on all the podcast channels. So if something inspires you today and you want more, please subscribe to your favorite channel, leave us a comment, and share your favorite episodes so we can create more ripples in the world for women. So if you've watched the show, you know a little bit about my background, but I spent 30 years in corporate America, too many of them hating Mondays. And no one ever told me I could break the rules and not get fired. So you can imagine how intrigued I was when I heard my next guest uses a break all the rules approach with her clients, helping them to create a big impact and love every Monday again. I had to learn more, and I thought you'd want to hear her too. Tammy Alvarez is the Career Winners Circle CEO, an accomplished author, professional keynote speaker, inspirational coach, and an epic storyteller. Today, we'll dive into Tammy's innovative and rule-breaking approach to career advancement and self-leadership. Her recent book, Escaping the Career Trap, I loved the subtitle, Transform Your Apathy into Ambition. It offers a self-leadership blueprint for high achievers who want to experience true career fulfillment. She tells us about some of the lies that hold us back and how we can challenge workplace norms and what it looks like to take charge of our careers. So I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. So let's get this party started. Hello, Tammy. Welcome.
Thank you, Maria, for the lovely introduction. I am so happy to be here today.
It is my pleasure. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time.
We both have.
Yeah. The truth is, we brought Tammy on in an earlier episode a couple months ago, and we had some technical glitches, and we couldn't finish the conversation. So we brought her back because
Here we are
that's what we
again.
want to do. All right, so let's talk about your book for a second. Well, probably for more than a second, because that's what this show is all about. But you talk about the 5 lies that hold people back from having a thriving career. I would love to hear and share with our audience. What are those 5 lies?
Absolutely. And Maria, much like you, I had a 25 plus year corporate career. Most of it was thriving, some of it was not. And a lot of these things, these lies that we're going to talk about today, really stemmed from the things I experienced and saw, and then realized without really knowing it, how you overcome them. And with the benefit of hindsight, being able to bring those forward. So everyone watching today has that opportunity to step into that thriving career. Some of these lies we don't even realize we think about. They're so ingrained into how we function and how we think things just are that when you hear them, you're like, oh, hang on a second, I need to challenge that norm. And the first lie I want to talk about is the fact that no one really loves Mondays, do they? A lot of times we think it's a pipe dream and or it's reserved for other people on the exclusive 10%. And so we give our power away by believing that loving Mondays doesn't really happen. Instead of coming into a space where not only do we know that we should love Mondays, but that we deserve to love Mondays. And that is as essential to us as the water we drink and the air that we breathe. And when you start to make that transition into thinking about that in those terms, and you stop taking second best as an option, a lot of things change. So, Maria, the second lie that we'll talk about is the fact that you don't have enough experience to do something different. So, if you're in a space where you just don't love what you're doing and you're looking at this, it's like, how do I compete with someone who's been doing this job for 10 years and I don't have the experience? That's another misbelief, and we can certainly talk about how we break through that as well. The third lie that we like to tell ourselves is that no one hires from outside their industry. And if your industry is the Titanic and you want to jump ship, you don't feel like you can, again, because you don't have that industry experience. So that's the third lie that we're talking about. And the fourth lie is probably one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck. And it is the fundamental belief that if you want to make a change, that you're going to have to give something up. And for some reason, we believe that happiness and all of our accomplishments, like we can't have both. We've got to give something up. Something has to give. And that's absolutely not true. But when we realize and see people that this happens to on a regular basis, there's a lot of reasons why you think it's true because you see it happen. But when you do it right, you can make a significant shift into something you've never done before without having to give up all the impact, the influence, and the money that you've worked so hard to earn. And then the last one that I see everyone getting stuck with is the belief that if you are a patient, that your company will take care of you and that your good work will be recognized. And the sad fact is that good work is not good enough. And we've got to show up differently. We've got to take more control over our careers to really step into that vibrant and thriving career that you want for yourself. So, Maria, those are the 5 lies in a quick summary, and we can dig into those however you'd like.
Oh, and we will. Because I have to tell you, I have experienced all of those, probably and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with my clients every day, and they're talking about one of those things or another. It is so prevalent. And I love that you position those as lies.
Mm-hmm.
So let's debunk those myths, right? So
Yes.
how do those lies hold us back, first of all?
So there's 3 primary ways that we can feel held back, right? One is when you feel like you are stuck in that soul crushing grind and you start to get that pit in your stomach on Sunday nights, thinking, I cannot survive this foolishness one more minute, right? Just dreading what's ahead, missed deadlines, overbooked calendars, all kinds of craziness that we all go through. And that's one of the symptoms that you'll start to feel when you know that these lies are encroaching on your career and on your livelihood. And it never fails. It is like clockwork. At 3 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, my email starts dinging like crazy because everyone is getting back online on Sunday afternoons trying to get ahead of the curve. And so, if you find yourself in that, just that pit in your stomach on Sunday nights, there's a big clue that you're stepping into these lies and really not taking full control of your career. So that's one way that shows up. If you find that you're being sidelined or that you're missing out on promotions or cool project opportunities, or you're not being brought in at the level that you need to, then that's another sign that you are really starting to fall into what I call the complacency trap. And it's interesting because when we look at the Gallup research, about 25% of people absolutely love what they do. About 15% of the people hate their jobs, and 60% are in this apathetic haze. And I would much rather see you love or hate something than feel nothing. And so if you're in that apathetic haze, then that's something else to think about. And it's interesting. I'll share a quick story, Maria. I was in Chicago facilitating a 3-day strategy session. And one of the days I was early. So I grabbed a cup of coffee and I sat in the lobby. And it was a big building, tons of companies. And I live in Mexico City, so I don't do the daily grind anymore. And I was sitting there drinking my coffee, watching what was happening. It looked like the zombie apocalypse had invaded Chicago. No one was making eye contact. Everyone was shuffling. I was like, what is going on here? And so if you feel like that's you on some days or most days, then that's another way that that's going to show up. And the other one, which kind of ties into that, the fifth lie that we were talking about, is if you feel like you are doing amazing work and it's not getting recognized, yet you don't want to be that person that's that self-promotional jerk, like, hey, look at me, look how awesome I am. And you can't find a way to have people recognize you and your team for the amazing things that you're doing, then, that's another way that these lies show up in our careers.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So a lot of that resonates with me as I look back on my 30-year corporate career. I'm so happy that I'm no longer in that
I'll
now.
never go back either, right? Mhm.
You couldn't pay me enough to do it. I literally couldn't. Once you get a taste of doing, becoming your own CEO, right? The CEO of your life and career.
That's
We're going to
right.
talk about that
Yeah.
in a minute as well. But it's hard to go. It's hard to go back. So you talk about breaking all the rules. So how how should people think about doing this, breaking the rules? And how do they do it and not get fired?
That's the most important part, right? It's like, how do I do this and still run things on my terms? And the best way to start to break these rules in a way that's productive and that gets things done, and you alluded to it just a second ago, is to start to treat your career like a business. And the good news is most of us already know how to do this because we run business units. We understand the concept of vision and strategy and execution. And we understand that we need a good sales team and, a good network. And we understand that we need to have products and services that are better than our competition. So all of these things that are very natural for us to do in running our businesses, if we take those skills and apply them to our own careers, and then realize that we are the CEO and you are the CEO of You Inc. And you start to make decisions based on business mindset instead of that emotional personal attachment that we tend to have with our role, you accomplish two things. You start to show up bigger and play differently. And you also start to have a very different perspective in how to advocate for yourself, in how to make decisions, how to set boundaries, and how to be successful. And I'll give you a really good example of where, what I'm talking about, because you need to think about your capabilities as a service, right? And it has to be the best service and better than your competitors because that's how businesses stay alive. But if I were to ask you today, are you better than your peers or your competition? You would probably be pretty uncomfortable saying yes, because none of us want to feel like we're better than anyone else. Yet, if you were to ask me this very minute, is the career winner circle better than its competition? I bet I'd say yes. Yes, we are. Right? We've got innovative approaches, epic breakthrough moments for our clients, and we show up differently. Now, does that mean that my competition, that other coaches are not good? Absolutely not. They're amazing. But in the space that we serve, the people that we service, yes, we are the best. And so when you have a CEO mindset, you're able to take a look at things in a different way than when you're taking more of an emotional approach. And so I think one of the other areas that I think is really interesting, that I see a lot of people have when you start to transfer this business mindset to how you run your career is I want you to think about vision, strategy, and execution. And we do this every single day at work and don't even think twice about it, right? We've got our vision statement, we know what we're about, we set our strategy, and we get our teams to do stuff. And sometimes really hard things. But let's think about how you do that for you. And let's use an analogy of a road trip. And let's say you've got a 5-hour road trip. So you decide you're going to go to the mountains, you're going to go to the beach, wherever you want to go. That is your vision. Next, you set your strategy. And when you're thinking about how you want to get there, you've got some choices. You can take the fastest way, you can avoid toll roads and do the scenic route, maybe stop at a few points of interest along the way. That's your strategy. And when it comes time for execution, you load up the car, fill up the gas tank, and go. But what happens after you're on the road for a bit? inevitably your navigation system is going to pop up and say, oh, hang on a second. There's a detour ahead. There's construction. There's an accident. Would you like to stay this course or would you like to go another way? And without even thinking, as we're on that road trip, we hit the nav and we are on to a different way. But too many times with our career, when this navigation system comes up and says, hang on a second, there's a slowdown ahead, we turn around and go home. And we really shouldn't. And so when you take on that business mindset, when you treat your business like a CEO, you know that you will get to that destination. It may not be the way you thought or as fast as you thought, but if you've got a solid vision and a strategy, you know that you're going to get there. And so, Maria, these are some of the ways that you can start to transition the ideas that you use for your day-to-day work to benefit your career.
I love that you used the metaphor of a road trip. One of my programs is called the Career Transition Roadmap.
Yeah.
So it's such a good analogy to be thinking about vision, strategy, and execution in terms of, you know, what you do if you're on a road trip, because that's what this is, right? We're all on this journey. It's different for everyone. The detours are different for everyone. The fast lanes are different for everyone, and the obstacles that come up are different. But when you have the CEO mindset, thinking of yourself, and I love the way you put it, you Inc. Love that. When you think about it that way, then you're in control. You just have to take your power, right? Step into that power.
And I think
And
a
just,
lot of people feel out of control these days, right?
yeah,
With the economy, the downsizing, all this stuff, we really feel like we're on our back foot. But it doesn't have to be that way, because the one thing I learned in my career, I was known as a transformation expert, is that during chaos, there is always opportunity.
mm-hmm,
And that's the time to surge, actually, is when everyone else is pulling back. And as a business owner, you know that, right? When things start to change, we're looking at the landscape and saying, okay, how can we show up bigger to serve the people that need us?
right.
Right. And if we look at that, a good example too, when you think about how customer focused you should be as a business owner, think about the person at work that drives you nuts. How would happen if you treated that person like your most valuable customer? And what would happen if everyone did that? And so these are the very, very discreet mindset shift changes that we can make that put us back in control.
Yeah. And what they also do is set us up as role models
Mhm.
for others. And they also teach others how to treat us,
Yes,
right? And
absolutely.
then we become mirrors for
Well,
others.
yes. And I think playing on the road trip analogy a little bit more, there's a lot of people who feel very disenfranchised by the system, right?
Yeah,
It's like, I'm not getting promoted. I'm not getting the comp. I'm not getting the recognition. And let's face it, companies spend so much time, money, and effort on performance management and career paths and all these things. And so, where's the disconnect? And here's what I think we're fundamentally missing is that, the system is there to build the roads, to put the guardrails up so you don't drive over the cliff, and to set the speed limits. But at the end of the day, we're the one driving the car. We don't have autonomous vehicles yet, right? So we're the ones driving the car. We decide how fast we really want to drive, and most importantly, what music we're going to play on our road trip.
yeah.
And so the system is not there, to handhold you the whole way. The system is there as a vehicle for you to use and leverage as you navigate your career. And so instead of feeling disenfranchised, look at what's happening, find a way to play that to your advantage, and start to make some of those business centric decisions that you probably haven't been making for yourself so far.
And I find that a lot of my clients get stuck in that place
Yeah.
because they're not quite sure what to do.
Well, and it's
You know,
interesting.
this
Yeah.
is the situation I'm not used to, right? I'm not used to coloring outside the lines, breaking the rules, uh, and there's resistance there, and being brave. courageous enough to take a risk. That's where a lot of my clients get stuck.
And one of my clients said something fascinating last week when we were in a coaching session. And we've only been working together for about a month or so it hasn't been that long. And she's ready to level up, but only female in a male dominated M&A company. Surprise, surprise. And so when we're talking about how she's showing up as a leader and doing some of these things, she said to me, she goes, a month ago, I wouldn't have even known this was wrong. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind that this is not how things are supposed to be. And so I think step one to those who feel stuck is you got to get that mindset first, because if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Right.
And so, so just starting to think, and so some simple things, not the big home runs, but little things that you can advocate for yourself in a more confident way that is authentic to you and works for the business that you're in based on the culture.
So let's talk about those little things.
Sure.
What do you think?
So here's some things that every business needs, right? And if you start to think about take that business approach, where we typically miss in terms of our career is, businesses need strong salespeople, because without customers, you're not in business. And so if we think that we're the CEO of You Inc. and your services are your business, who's your salespeople? Where's your sales team? And how you translate that from running a business to running your career is, who are your sponsors? Who are your advocates? Who are the people in the company that are saying great things about you when you're not in the room? And it has to be more than just your boss. And a good CEO will hire the best sales team they possibly can. And if you take that mindset, then you're going to be more aware and intentional in terms of how you build that sponsorship with your stakeholders. Another thing a good CEO has is they have an amazing group of people that they can rely on for advice, perspective, opinions, because when you're the CEO, no one's going to tell you you're wrong most of the time, right? You're at the top and you need to get external opinions. And so most of us hate to network, and that's fair enough, but I want you to not think about network. I want you to think about your power base. So who are the people in your community that can and will make a difference for you? And here's a good example in one of those, what I'm talking about. So one of my clients, financial services, that's my space. So that's where a lot of my clients come from. And she knew that she wanted to be up for managing director in 2 years. And that's a big deal. And she's in a very good company. The competition is fierce. And so she came to work with me to try and get ready for this. And one of the biggest things she needed to do was dust off her power base. So she went back to her network and she had found people that she hadn't talked to in 10 or 15 years. And when she started to look, these people are now in significantly powerful roles at high levels within all the organizations. So she reached out to them. And again, not to ask for a job, but to ask for insight. She needed an outside perspective to be able to see what was going on in the market, what were the trends, so she could bring that inside, recommend a transformation initiative that would solve a problem the company's had for a while. She was able to get that sponsorship and get that project off the ground and made managing director in no time flat. And so who do you have in your world that will do those types of things, that will help you level up, that will help you think differently and give you different pieces of exposure? And so these are two things you can do that does not put your job at risk. It just makes everything even better and more enriched.
Exactly. It establishes a foundation from which you can jump when you have the kind of associations
Yes.
in your network that are beneficial to you. And I love the story that you just told, because how many of us go, establish connections with people, relationships with people that we've worked with in the past, and then we move on, and those relationships die on the vine.
Sure.
And we never keep them up. But when we need them most, we have to do the dust off thing, right? And reestablish those connections. What if we were forward thinking enough to just keep those connections, those relationships even if you did it once a year, right? Just so when you do need them and you're watching them, you watch where they're going. Who can they help? Who can you help?
Exactly. You need to be that person that you want other people to be for you, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And you're right. And that no, you will never get fired over that. Look what happened for your client, right? She brought some new ideas into the organization, solved a problem, and there was her promotion.
Yes. And it was, so the 10 she reached out to, 8 responded and 6 helped. And these are people she just, because I think we feel so guilty for leaving our network and not talking to people. But here's the magic: they're not reaching out to us either.
Right.
And so, so it is just a human trait that we all just are not great at this. And that's okay. But do it before you need it,
Yeah.
and make it
Do
a
it before you
lifestyle,
need
not a
it. Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
And you'll always have the
Yeah.
power base that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. And get over the guilt
Right.
that might be underlying your thinking about reconnecting.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, they haven't done it either. And who knows? It might be the perfect time that they need something that you can provide.
That's right. I know the second time I got fired, because I've been fired twice, and the second time the first time I got fired was during an economic boom. So I was like, oh, I felt like a free agent. That was easy, right? The second time I was like, oh, times are tough out here. This is difficult, and I was exactly the same way. I'd left my network for dead, and reaching out to them in a time of need was embarrassing.
Yep.
And I had to do it because I was a sole provider for my family. My husband was a stay-at-home dad. And so, you have to kind of put your pride and ego aside. But what I realized is that there are creative ways once you re-engage to keep the conversation going. For example, I offered to mentor, a person on one of those leaders' teams. It took half an hour a month just to keep that relationship going. And so there's a lot of creativity, in ways that you can keep those relationships going. And I think if we treat it like a lifestyle, and the thing too, Maria, is that women are so good at building community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet when it
We are.
comes to the job, we forget all the things. And
Mm.
and it just doesn't serve us in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. We are good at creating community,
Mhm.
and we are good at uh, finding threads,
Mhm.
right, that we can weave into various facets of our lives, so that we have lots of reasons to create relationships, to rekindle relationships. Yeah, if we're creative, if we think about it and I so often I will have a client say to me, because I am a huge proponent of creating what I call your personal board of directors. So
Mhm.
if you are the CEO of your life and career, every successful CEO has a board that they rely on, and those people are experts. Their zones of genius are in other areas than ours.
Yeah.
And if we think about who we need, and over time, as we evolve, situations evolve, we grow, our board has to grow different, it has to be different,
Yes.
right? So people are coming and they're going. And this is the kind of, if you establish something like this, it kind of forces you to continue that networking, because you need something different, right? And those people on your board need to be people you trust, will tell you the truth, and will hold you accountable for what you say you want to do, will guide you, mentor you, all of those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one other thing that doesn't cost a lot of political capital in terms of breaking these rules that I see a lot of people getting stuck on is their relationship with failure.
Oh, yeah.
And so so many people are trying to avoid failure because they're afraid of the losing face and the political capital, and everyone's seeing that you've made a mistake. And what I want everyone watching today to realize is that you cannot succeed without having failed. And so if you are avoiding failure, you're preventing success. And one of the easier ways I found, because I was always, over my skis in terms of the jobs that I had, I always took on an experimental mindset. Because when you take on an experimental mindset, nothing is a full failure and nothing is a complete success. It's more like, what does this button do? And let's push it and see what happens. And when you do that in a transparent way, where you're like, we're going to try something new here, but some of it's going to work, some of it's not. And we're going to be open about this, keep the good stuff, redo the stuff that didn't work well for us. Now, all of a sudden, you're not afraid to take on those risks.
Yep.
Because you're not backing yourself into this binary corner that you can never get out of.
Yeah. So when we think about everything's a test, right?
Yes.
If we have never done it before, it's just a test. Yeah.
And
I love that.
And the rate of change that is happening in our workplace today, you can make a perfectly valid, sound decision right now.
Yeah.
And 3 months from now, that is going to be the worst idea ever because of nothing you could have done or predicted.
Right.
And so it is okay and the thing that surprises me is that corporate America has adopted the agile methodology for software very easily. Like, no one does waterfall or long-term projects anymore. But why don't we allow ourselves the same grace?
So true. So true. I think I think sometimes our leadership training is from the previous century.
Absolutely. We've got old norms that are still hanging out there, right? I think one of the other things that I see everyone gets stuck with, but mostly women, is what I call the toxic self-improvement cycle.
The toxic what?
Self-improvement cycle.
Self-improvement cycle. Okay.
And so here's what I'm talking about, right? Because we all need to grow and get better.
Yeah.
But what we do is we spend so much time and effort trying to get good at things that we're not good at, instead of using that same level of effort and time to get better at our strengths. And when we play to our strengths, you are going to grow so much faster.
Right.
Then, because if you're not good at something by now, you're never going to be. You may be adequate, but you're never going to be great. Yeah. And so I have so many things I'm not good at, right? So many. And I found over time that it was better for me to lean into my strengths and make sure that everyone else on my team had strengths in areas that I didn't, because then they loved doing the work that I hated and they were excellent at it. For me, I worked in the financial services industry. I'm not a numbers girl. I don't think that letters and numbers should be together. I don't think that's natural. But I am grateful because of science and technology. Yeah. So I surrounded myself with quants and business analysts and data people who could crunch all those things and then turn it into English for me so I could make a better business decision. And so we spend so much time trying to get good at the things that we feel bad about, that we're not good at, instead of saying, how can I defer some of that work? How can I do more of the things that I'm good at, which actually brings me more joy? Yeah. And, brings you that energy and that level of vitality. So I would challenge the people watching, where are you spending your development time?
It's really interesting that you just brought that up, because do more of the things that you love to do that bring you joy, light you up, and less of the things you either are not good at or you just don't want to do anymore, right? Yeah. Some of those things, that is the essence of a really simple self-assessment I do with all of my clients. Yes. Figure out how to transfer skills. You got to figure out what are all of those human and technical skills you have. Mm-hmm. What are the things that make you good at what you do, right? Which of those do you love, and which are those you don't want to do anymore because you're not good at them? They're not in your zone of genius. They don't bring you joy. You're a master at them, but you're ready to level up and you don't want to do it at that level anymore. Yeah. Whatever that is, when you have that kind of a vision, it becomes very directional. It brings a lot of clarity.
Yes. And less stress. Right? We've got enough to be stressed at right now, right?
Less stress if you can find ways to do more of the things you love to do,
Yes.
right? And when you recognize that, it also gives you great contrast, right? When you have an assessment like this, to look at the work you're doing now. How much of that falls in the I love this stuff,
Yeah.
and how much of it falls in the yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
so
Yes.
yeah, not so happy with that. And if
Absolutely.
it's more on that side, then that's when you hate Mondays, right? That dread on Sundays starts to happen. So we really ruined two perfectly good
Perfectly
days.
good weekend days. Yes, exactly. And you shouldn't be getting that back, right?
Yeah.
And I want you to think about, because we see this all the time too, Maria, right? Where if you're a business owner, you take that business mindset. How many times do you see your clients that have the honor of doing more work without a compensation adjustment or a title change? Right? It's like, we love you so much. We're going
Yeah.
to bring you into the day. We're for nothing else. Now, for me, I love my clients very much, but if like we're going to have you do 20% more work, then okay, let's renegotiate that statement of work. Let's have a conversation around, being fair and equitable. If I see a lot of people fall into the trap of, we'll make it up to you at bonus time. And you got to hope that your boss doesn't get fired or have amnesia by the time the next bonus cycle runs around. And I don't know how many people are devastated when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And they've killed themselves. They've run through brick walls, all of these things on the promise of a future that doesn't come. And it is okay to set boundaries. It is okay to negotiate for yourself right now and say, I'd love to do this work. And yes, they're coming to you because they know you can. And using that to your advantage to be able to get something for yourself now, not 6 months from now or a year from now, or those types of things. And these promises are well intended. They just very rarely actually come to fruition. And so
Right.
when we think about this from a business perspective, like we would never do that as a business owner. So give yourself the same permission. It's like you're running a business. Time, money, value, return on investment. And when you start to think about that and you start to align your work to the company's strongest priorities, you start to be able to advocate for yourself in a much better way.
Oh, so many golden nuggets in what you just said. It's okay to negotiate. It's okay to set boundaries. And don't be bamboozled by the well-intentioned, probably, leadership team who says to you, you're doing such a good job, here's more work for you.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
just take it as an accolade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, that's what will burn you out faster than anything else,
Yes.
right? You just keep taking on more work because you're so good at what you do. And they appreciate that you're good at what you do, but they're not compensating you.
No. And compensation comes in a variety of different ways, right? So
Right.
sometimes money is tight and not everybody can get a promotion, but you can advocate for, okay, then I want a mentor or I want to be in on one of the emerging leader programs that the company is running, or I'm looking for, a role in a new department so I can grow my knowledge base. So there's so many things that you can use to negotiate that are of high value, that it doesn't always have to be about money and promotion. you know,
Right.
it's a place to start,
Yep.
but it's not a place
Right.
to end.
Right. But there has to be some kind of give
Yes,
to get, right?
absolutely. And when
Yeah.
you think about running a business, we like, let's pretend we're buying pencils, right? You're going to find the best supplier with the highest quality at the
Right.
lowest price. That is how businesses stay in business. But yet when it's us, we feel very personally affronted by this.
Yeah.
And but they are in business to pay, to get the best value for money. And so they will pay you what you require, and they will pay you as little as you accept. So it's
And
just something to think about.
if we don't speak up, if
Mhm.
we don't say something, they will think that we're all okay with it.
Yes, there's no reason
When
not to.
when in reality we're just afraid
Yes.
to say something. We're afraid to negotiate. We're afraid to set boundaries. We're afraid to ask for what we deserve in return for that extra work that you want me to
Yes.
do. Yeah.
And I developed my courage with an unfair advantage in terms of compensation, because a little bit of my background, I didn't come through the ranks the way everyone else did. When my family, when my parents split up when I was 15, we ended up homeless when my dad left. And by the time I graduated college, I didn't have the ambition, the grades, or the money, so I didn't go. And I worked for, I figured I'm going to go to work, and in a few years, I'll get my act together and go to college. Well, I kept getting promoted. I had amazing mentors. So here I am, 35 years old and managing director, in a financial services industry. And I never went to college. I came from a small town in northern New Jersey where there are more dairy cows than people. And I was living the imposter syndrome before it was a thing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that was my jam. And so I never realized how underpaid I was until I became the chief of staff for the first time. And as that chief of staff, I saw everybody's compensation. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was a jaw dropping, not just for me, but for so many people in the organization to see that perspective. So that was an unfair advantage for me to really know my market value. Now, it's not like I marched into my boss's office that day and said, okay, I'm $80,000 undercompensated. Let's fix this right now. But it did give me that perspective and that confidence to realize and see for real that people get what they negotiate for.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. You have to ask.
You don't ask, you don't
If,
get.
if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Always no.
Always no.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. All right. So you share some really inspiring insights in your book, from people whose stories you've told. What are some of your favorites? They are very telling. I love some of these stories.
Yeah, I love, right? Because first of all, I was humbled by how many people were willing to share their journeys, their vulnerabilities, those types of things. It's always nice, right? To
Yeah.
be able to talk about something other than yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So that's always my favorite. Yeah, I think one of my favorites was the story where one of my clients needed to get a very, very important public health issue fixed. There was lead in the water in everything, and it was affecting communities. And it was affecting the underprivileged in these communities. And the issue was multi-pronged, very complicated, and a political nightmare. And he was able to find the right time from a political perspective, get people together who either didn't know or trust each other, and finally get the legislation passed that they needed to. And the level of complexity that this required, I think, was just absolutely astounding. But at the end of the day, he said one thing that will stick with me forever. And he said, change happens at the speed of trust.
Ooh.
And I was like, boom, what a comment. And so when we think about the level of change in our environment today, which is at a breakneck pace, and when we think about the uncertainty and the conflict and the disagreements and all of those things, and we wonder why these headwinds are so hard, let's take a step back and start to build trust.
That is so powerful. Change happens at the speed of trust. Wow. I'm going to
Yeah,
be thinking about that. That it feels like it is like a truth bomb.
absolutely. And I
Whoa.
can't even take credit for it, even though it's in my book.
No, no.
Right. So but he was just absolutely, so it's just amazing to see, because we move so fast and we're taught to depersonalize work.
Yeah.
But you can't build relationships superficially,
Mm-mm.
and you can't build trust superficially.
So here now we come full circle back to the conversation about how important it is for us, each of us, to have this network of people, these advocates, these mentors, these sponsors, who we can go to and we trust and they trust us.
Yeah.
So change happens at the speed of trust. Love that. Tell us another one. I love these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other big stories that I really loved was the accidental selflessness that one of my clients ended up having. And so she was in a hyper growth startup, one that we all know and love. And she built her team from scratch. And because she was like employee 100 and really got things started, the company was growing at a rate that was just insane. And she realized that in order for her team to really grow, in order for her leaders to truly be able to contribute to the organization in a meaningful way, she had to give them up. And that she had to find other opportunities for them in bigger parts of the organization. And so one at a time, she went and talked to her peers that were all over the company. And she negotiated the ability to transfer those leaders into those organizations so they could grow and make a bigger impact. Once she got the verbal approval on all of those, then she went to the CEO and his leadership team and said, here's what's going on. My team can do more. They need to do more, but they can't do it in my organization because it's just not going to work. So instead of her making a power play and trying to get more control, she gave those people away, literally. They all agreed it was a good idea. Her team became very small and she felt exposed, but they were like, no, you're going to be fine. Don't worry. There's plenty of work for everybody. But she wasn't 100% sure about that. Now, this company was due to go public. And that's a big reason why she did it, so they could, shore up their bench strength. Well, as it turns out, disaster struck. They didn't go public. And it was a nightmare. And because she had given up her team, she had the capacity, the bandwidth, and the perspective to get things back on track. And if she had hung on to her team, if she had not done that selfless act from a leadership perspective and really advocated for her team so they could grow, she would have never had one of the biggest career opportunities of her lifetime.
Wow.
And that was bringing a company back from a failed IPO.
Wow. Wow. That is selfless.
And we spend so much time trying to get more and have more and hold on to people and all of those things. And so what we need to think about as leaders, I've always found, here's a pro tip for you. I've always found that if you're doing a big transformation, which usually involves a reorg, if you remove your box, you get promoted. And so to have that selflessness, be able to say, you can do this without me. Yeah. But because you're doing that and all of the work that you've just done, now you've got that opportunity for growth for yourself. It takes a little bit of bravery, but it's worked for me every time.
Yeah. And it's thinking beyond you, right? It's not all about us, right? It's not. Sometimes it is, but it's not all about us. And when we are leading a team, thinking about them and what's best for them, boy, that is, that what she did was superb.
And she could have never known that the IPO was going to fail. I mean, it wasn't like it was a calculated move.
No, of course.
And she was very vulnerable, but well respected within the organization as a strong leader. So it was just really interesting.
Yeah. And if the amount of respect she must have gained,
absolutely,
as a result of doing that, and trust that she has everyone else's best interests at heart, and put herself in a very vulnerable state. Yeah, that's an incredible story. Love that story. You have so many more in your book.
We could go on for hours, even though we're not supposed to, right?
We could talk for hours. We could, but we can't today. So I would love for you to help us wrap this up. I like to say, wrap it up in a bow for us. So what are some key takeaways that you would like to leave with our audience today?
And so, as women, today you have permission to put yourself first. And we don't do that naturally. I know I don't, and everyone else does either. But when you put yourself first and you really start to step into the things that energize you, that's in your wheelhouse, that you love to do, you're going to start loving Mondays again.
Yeah.
And so whether that's a job change, whether that's in place, it doesn't matter. Just start to see where you can make those changes right now. So love every Monday. Realize that it's not a pipe dream, right? It is essential to everything that you do. And then when you treat your career like a business, you're going to make better decisions for yourself. And you're going to think about things differently and take different actions. And then ultimately, when you step into that power as that CEO of You Inc., that's when you start to thrive. And that's what I want for all of you.
I love that. And that's my favorite word. The name of my company is Transition and Thrive. I
That's
love
it. Love it, right?
love
Yes.
that word. Yeah, because that's what we all deserve, right?
Yes.
We all deserve it. And we all have the power to choose that for ourselves. And sometimes it takes a little help from a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need our board of directors. We need people to talk to that we trust and who can guide us when
Yeah.
we don't know how to do that ourselves.
Yes.
So,
And I also think we have seasonality in our careers. And to step into that and think about what season am I in and be okay with that.
yeah,
And define success, because realizing success is A, not linear, but B, seasonal. And
right.
it's okay to change that definition whenever you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, whenever you
Yeah.
want.
Yep.
Yeah, what season are you in? It's
That's
the
it.
season you choose to be in. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so for everyone, I want to be sure you get Tammy's book, Escaping the Career Trap, because the stories in this book are fabulous. The lessons, the tips, it's just full of golden nuggets. Tammy, thank you so much for being here. I know that people are
Such
going
a
to want
pleasure.
to reach out to you. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, best way is to visit us at the Escaping the Career Trap website. And there I do keynote speeches, seminars, workshops. So all of that information is there for you if you're in a position to need some inspiration and some fun times with big groups. And then also we've got some really special free bonuses for people who buy the book through Escaping the Career Trap. You've got a signed hard copy and some other good stuff. So that is the best place to go to see all about using my capabilities as a keynote, as well as to getting the book and really helping make sure that you're always in a position of strength and thriving.
I love that. You have so many great resources. And we all love complimentary things, don't we? That
Yes,
teach us something. I love
that's
that.
right.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Tammy.
Maria.
I've loved this conversation and I am really happy that we finally made it.
Me too. This has been great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to your community today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. And for those watching and listening, I appreciate that you're a part of this community. So if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, share it, click a star, and let us know what you liked. So, creating and sharing resources for women is just one of my favorite things to do. And another favorite thing to do is being a life and career coach for women navigating challenging times, helping them get unstuck, explore new possibilities, and find harmony in their career and life. So, if something in this episode resonates with you and you'd like a fresh perspective, reach out. Let's talk. The links to get to Tammy and me are in the show notes below. So please click away. And let's meet here next time, next Thursday, like every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for another inspiring conversation. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.